Well, hey everybody, welcome back to the Primary Care Podcast. It is your boy, Dr. Mark List, and today, before we get at you with another episode, we're going to hit up the primarycarepod@gmail.com inbox. That is where you have been sending me really nice letters and kind words about the podcast. Also, some good jokes I've been getting, which I'll read in future episodes, journal topic ideas, etc. So thanks for all the emails. Again, primarycarepod@gmail.com. Today, we are going to be reading a joke from an anonymous listener. Dr. List, longtime listener of the podcast, I have a joke for you today. A man was admitted to our hospital today with 20 plastic toy horses inserted up into his rectum. His attendings have described his condition as stable. All right, let's start the podcast.
The Primary Care Podcast is written and edited by a family physician for an audience of other physicians, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, residents, and medical students interested in primary care topics. This is not a podcast for patients and should not be used as medical advice. This is also a personal podcast produced in my own time and solely reflecting my personal opinions. Statements of this podcast do not reflect the views or policies of my employer, past or present, or any other organization with which I may be affiliated.
Thank you for listening to the Primary Care Podcast. I'm Dr. Mark List, here to bring you the latest news, guidelines, and updates from primary care sources around the globe. Keeping it under 15 minutes long because you're in a hurry and I'm not that smart. Well, welcome back, everyone, to the Primary Care Podcast. It is your favorite podcasting doctor/host/best friend/audio fanatic. I don't know. I'm just going to stop. And welcome back, all pod girls, pod boys, pod people, to the Primary Care Pod. Let's hit up today another episode about COVID-19, but a fun topic about COVID-19. That is there something we can do for our patients who have lost their taste of smell and taste? This comes to an article today. Maybe you saw the headlines. I think this is a really interesting article, and I want to dig into it in terms of, can this be something that you can actually do in your primary care clinic? And I'm going to argue yes. And in fact, I think I am going to offer it to a certain subset of my patients. But I think that this is something I will jump on, even though the evidence is very weak at this current time. So what is that topic today? We're talking about fixing or reversing the loss of smell and taste and getting improvement to patients to return them back to normal. Okay, so what are we talking about today? We are talking about an article that literally just came out in January of 2021, so just over 3 months ago, from the incredibly prestigious European Archive of Otorhinolaryngology. Laryngology. Wow. I'm not going to ever try to repeat the name of that journal again. Okay, and so this is a study that looked at the efficacy and safety of oral corticosteroids plus olfactory training in the management of COVID-19 related loss of smell. And I'm laughing as I say this because olfactory training is something that is brand new to me. This was a new concept that I had never heard of before this article. And they keep referring to it in the article as OT. There's already an OT authors of this journal. I don't know if the international medical societies don't have occupational therapy. Maybe that's a United States only thing. I don't know. But trying to refer to olfactory training as olfactory therapy as an OT, yeah, you can't use that acronym, guys. Okay, so I want to make very clear from the start. This is a very lighthearted topic. This is again. Take this episode with a grain of salt, but I am actually very interested to try this, and I actually recruited a patient, and I strongly suggested that he be my guinea pig on this because I think the risks are pretty small, but we're going to talk about that. And so what is the trial? The trial is putting people on a 10-day course of steroids and at the same time doing twice daily olfactory treatment. So let's back up a little bit. What kind of N numbers are we talking about? Well, they took 72 people who were not in the hospital, diagnosed with COVID, who had lost their smell or taste. Now, some people were completely anosmic, right? And some were just hyponosmic. So some were completely lost their smell and taste, and other people had just kind of had altered or diminished, right? And you and I have seen this too, where many people have certain things haven't come back yet. Certain things still taste odd. A friend of mine who, again, I'm going to try to talk into being my guinea pig for this in my own clinic. says like coffee, for example, doesn't taste like anything anymore. And, for a lot of people, there are things that have been altered now for them, and it is a huge quality of life issue now. Things that they used to enjoy suddenly don't have as much enjoyment. So what are we talking about? The N number in here is 72. And so then they followed these patients, okay? And at least, on average, not at least, on average, these 72 patients had lost their diminished, or either had lost or diminished smell for, on average, 5 weeks. Now, when they had these people come back and do the trial on them, only 37%, 38 if we're rounding up, 38%, only 27 of them actually had persistent symptoms, right? So 62% of patients who had lost their smell, right, ended up gaining it back, right, all on their own. And so they were no longer considered, when the testing came through, that they were defined, and we're going to talk about why, but they were no longer defined as having altered smell. And I think that's important because even that people that had altered, and they still might have some altered symptoms, but it's not enough to be clinically defined, at least in this study, as altered smell. So they used this kit, and it's a kit that you can order on the internet, Sniffin Sticks, which, by the way, is my favorite. My favorite test of all time is called the Sniffin Sticks Battery Test. And yes, this is, if you don't think that you can get published in a scientific journal, these people not only called olfactory training OT for the entire article, but then sold me on doing this treatment based on the Sniffin Sticks Battery Test. Okay, but seriously, so they took these 27 people, and they offered them, and 18 of the people chose, so it was not blinded, but chose to stay on the standard therapy, right? And 9 people then got on the oral corticosteroid and olfactory training group. Okay, and again, that was a little bit of an odd decision that they didn't randomize them, they didn't blind them, they told the patient. And so this is not a randomized control trial. This is I'm going to inform you of the risks of the benefits, right? And because this is brand new, right? When people ask me like, how are people treating certain conditions that are post-COVID, we're all flying by the seat of our pants. Steroids are the mainstay of treatment because that seems to be the only thing that works at all. And I've been telling people that there's a long COVID clinic in some, like Cleveland Clinic, for example. But the majority of docs, we just throw up our hands. We say, we don't know. And here's a group who says, well, we're throwing up our hands, we don't know, but we're going to do a study and measure these outcomes and see if what we're doing is making a difference. So God bless them. And what did they say? So specifically, they didn't do the randomization because, let me pull this up here. All patients were checked for potential complications for oral corticosteroids, and it has a bunch of rule-out stuff. And then it says, given the safety concerns about oral steroid use held by the medical community and by the general population of patients, participants were informed about potential side effects of a short course of oral corticosteroids and were asked to opt for a treatment group on a voluntary basis. So 9 patients raised their hand and said, give me the steroids plus the therapy. And then 18 people said, actually, let's just go through the therapy and see if it makes a difference. So again, huge potential for bias, huge potential for placebo effect, because you knew what you were getting. You knew if you were getting the milder group or the big treatment group. Okay, so again, as we actually sit down and look at the data, this is a garbage study, right? Because there's absolutely no randomization. In fact, you're letting the patients pick whether they're getting the, and knowing that they're getting the more aggressive or less aggressive course. Okay, so that's really important before we jump into this treatment, okay? Super duper duper important to know. And it's a 10-day course of 32 milligrams of methylprednisolone once daily combined with olfactory training, okay? So for each session of the olfactory training, patients were asked to mindfully, quote unquote, mindfully sniff 4 odors for approximately 10 seconds each, okay? Rose, eucalyptus, lemon, and cloves. So all of you who are out there with the side hustle of selling essential oils, you probably already got these in your drawers. If not, go to your local whatever doTERRA, whatever they are, and buy some rose, eucalyptus, lemon, and cloves, and then turn them around and sell them to your patients. Hashtag unethical life pro tips. Okay. So there's these 4 things from the Sniff and Sticks battery test, right? But this was they were provided to all patients with a smell training kit, and it gives you this thing in the Netherlands where you can buy them, but anywhere you can buy rose, eucalyptus, lemon, and clove scents, you could have these patients pick these things up. Okay, so and so they were asked to do this twice a day for 10 total weeks, and then they were also treated at the same time with 10 days of steroids if you chose to be in that group. Okay, great, fantastic, wonder. Okay, so. Now, let's talk about the actual data, okay? The actual data shows that the patients in the steroid group, on average, got better by 7.7 points on a 48-point scale, okay? Which was statistically significant compared to the placebo group, or standard therapy group, just the olfactory, the OT group, who only got better by 2 points on a 48-point scale. Okay, so and all of these patients had to be, the first group, they had started at 19.7. So these people on a 48-point scale, anything under 30, I'm going to cut this part out, I think, or I'm too lazy to edit it. You had to score less than 30.75. That's completely random. But you had to score less than 30.75 to be considered dysomnic. So you had to score lower on that scale than a 30 to even qualify. And the average was 19.7 in the control group and in the treatment arm, and 24.9 in the control arm. That was a non-statistical significant difference in that p-value between those two groups, even though they look fairly different. Very, 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 very wide distribution of symptoms. Some people literally just made the cutoff based on this graph they're showing here. Many people, in fact, in both groups, just barely made the cutoff under that score of 30 to qualify to get into the study. So again, a wide range of people in this, and some people were miserable. Some people were completely anosmic, and then some were just mildly involved. So again, not a very homogeneous population, a very diverse group of patients fitting this profile. Now, there's a really good figure 1 on here that shows the change from April to July, right, in this 10-week trial with the steroid group or the normal treatment group. And in the steroid group, every single patient got better. Everyone had improvement in some of their symptoms. And they all, on average, the whole group got better by 7.7 points on that 48-point scale. But every single person made improvement, and a couple of them made very, very big improvements. If we look in the standard care group, though, there were several patients, in fact, I'm counting 4 here, that got significantly worse from start to finish, and many didn't change at all from start to finish on just the olfactory therapy group. Now, again, I think it's very important to note that, again, the group that shows the more modest effect knew what they were getting themselves into. The second major take-home point, not that the steroids were, so magically different. Again, these are 2 very different groups who got to pick their treatment arm, so potential for massive placebo-like effect, okay, of the steroids, knowing that you were getting the more aggressive therapy. The second really important key is that average compliance to olfactory training was 43% in the steroid group and 31% in the OT group alone. Now, that is a massive percentile difference, but because the confidence intervals were all over the place, some people did only 16% of the time they actually did their olfactory training sessions, and all the way up to 63%. Did, or at least one patient did 63%. One patient only did 16%, right? And so a massive variance in people's actual adherence to home OT olfactory training means that, could this just be steroids alone? If there was such poor adherence to the smelling part, the actual therapy part. And if there are any physical therapists or occupational therapists, they're probably like nodding their head because you tell patients to do these exercises in physical therapy, occupational therapy, and they don't do their exercises, they don't do the stretches, they don't get any better. And here's again another study that advocates for like, hey, we have this olfactory training which hasn't shown improvement in other studies. And by the way, this is a validated testing. This is a validated training regimen that's been done in other studies. I did cross-reference that with some PubMed, and yes, that's very well documented. And again, so how much is the steroids versus how much is the olfactory training? Hard to tell because hardly anybody's doing the olfactory training in either group. But the steroid group did get statistically significant, much, much better. Now, what are the downsides? There were not very many side effects reported, and I think that is important to note that there was this big overall concern for patients. Only one person had three patients reported minimal side effects, right? So again, 3 out of the 9, 33%, that tracks with what you normally see with normal steroid side effects of, not sleeping well, eating a ton, all the side effects that go along with steroids, just feeling, jittery, craving sugars, upset stomach, increasing their blood pressures, increasing their blood sugars, etc. Only 3 people even noticed them, and they weren't major side effects. So this is a very, very cheap study. This is a very, very benign study, and I think that there could be incredible value for patients because this is a major quality of life issue. I want to do a little more of a lighthearted topic today, and I think we accomplished that. I think that there is some value in this topic, though, especially in primary care clinics of patients that still struggle with it months and months after their, months and months after their infection, or even weeks after their infection, that maybe this will speed them up on the way to normal a little bit faster than steroids alone or just kind of standard watch and wait kind of therapy. So this is something I am actually going to offer and try in my own clinic and see if things make a difference. I have tried steroids by themselves anecdotally, and it hasn't worked on either of the N of 3 patients that I've tried them on, off-label, of course, but we've had good shared risk decision-making conversations about that. But I've never tried steroids plus olfactory training, so I definitely will try that on at least a couple patients here going forward. So today, hopefully we had a more lighthearted but interesting and potentially useful topic to regain people's loss of smell after COVID-19. So thanks for tuning in this week. Again, this has been Dr. Mark Lewis with the Primary Care Podcast, asking you to have a great week, and reminder, you don't need to stay up all night to stay up to date. Thanks. Have a great night.